If you're into self-improvement or into nonfiction books, chances are you have come across Atomic Habits by James Clear. That's why in today's video, we're going to cut through the noise and go straight to the most relevant ideas in the book. So stay tuned. But first, hello, my name is Steffi and welcome to the coffee table, a place where we read books, talk about stuff, and if we're lucky, learn something. Idea number one in the book is that you're constantly creating new habits or reinforcing old ones, whether you realize it or not. But what are habits? Habits essentially are our actions that have become automatic. Essentially, habits are an important mechanism that allows humans to perform daily tasks on autopilot and are essential to our survival as a species. In fact, in her book, Good Habits, Bad Habits, the author, Wendy Wood, states that around 43% of our daily actions are driven by habits. Imagine that. So 43% of our day is basically automatic on autopilot. However, habits can definitely be a double-edged sword. If we're not conscious of our habits, we run the risk of reinforcing bad habits that might impact us negative. And according to the author, it's much easier to create a new habit than to uproot an old one. The task of breaking a bad habit is like uprooting a powerful oak within us. And the task of building a good habit is like cultivating a delicate flower one day at a time. Idea number two is that small, consistent actions trump big changes any day of the year. Opposed to what popular culture might make you believe, success doesn't happen overnight. Yes, we see stars and TikTok superstars suddenly become famous overnight. But the reality is that most people that are successful have been working at it in some way or another for years, so many hours, etc., etc. Really truthful change happens over tiny actions every day as opposed to big, insane one-time changes overnight. James Clear, the author, actually puts it in a very simple formula, which states, small habits plus consistency plus time equals remarkable results. You imagine your life as improving 1% every day. At the beginning, it might seem like pretty insignificant. Eventually, you will find radical change. Just like compound interest grows your money, habits compound your success, your productivity, and your identity. And again, this can go up or down. As the author says, you get what you repeat. Number three, you have to forget about goals and focus on systems instead. If you're into self-improvement and if you're reading this book, chances are you are a pretty goal-oriented person. And don't get me wrong, I love goals. I think goals do have a time and place in helping you keep focus, but at the same time, goals by itself will not help you build long-lasting change that translates into more effective habits. According to the author, some of the problems with goals are that goals only focus on momentary change. Goals tend to restrict happiness, and goals are focused on the finish line rather than changing your identity in the long term. So for example, say you want to lose weight. When you put a goal, like I want to lose 10 pounds, right, in 3 months, you commit to the goal, you accomplish it, and then what? After 3 months, that's it? Like, are you done losing weight? Are you reverting back to your old weights? In fact, this is what happens a lot. Like, people tend to put so much focused energy in reaching the goal that as soon as they reach it, they're like, almost revert back. Instead, when you change your identity and you focus on systems, you're looking at the whole picture. You're not looking at fixing one specific moment in time. So let's take a look at the system proposed by the author to create new effective habits that are sustainable throughout your whole life and get rid of bad ones, basically. The 4 laws of behavior change. 4 laws of behavior change is basically the system of framework that James Clear proposes in order to create effective atomic habits. These laws are make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. Any successful habit, in short, should be obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying for it to stick to the long. Law number 1, make a habit obvious. Habits are created and reinforced by what is called a habit loop. A habit loop consists of a cue, so whatever triggers the habit, which causes a craving, then comes the action or the response. And then thanks to that response, you have a reward. So for example, if you smell cookies in a bakery, then your craving you start craving something sweet. Therefore, you go into the bakery, you buy the cookie and you eat it. And therefore, because it feels good, you reinforce a habit, and more likely than not, you will. The first law, make it obvious, deals with the first part of the formula, the cue. The cue, as I mentioned, is what triggers a habit to happen, and this can be done consciously or subconsciously. The most common cues tend to be time and location. So for example, if at a certain time you get hungry, or if you're going through a particular street, you want to go in a specific way, or those are the most common cues. However, there are all other sorts of cues that again can happen consciously and unconsciously. With the first law, the idea is that if you want to create a new habit, you should make the new cue or trigger as obvious as possible. Some strategies that help you make cues and habits more obvious are: number one, change your environment. This is a super simple yet powerful change. Just basically make it easier for you to be triggered. What do I mean by this? If you want to read more, place a book by your pillow. So when you're going to sleep, you are actually visually reminded, oh, that's right, I need to read. If you want to stop watching so much Netflix or TV, unplug the TV or literally move it to somewhere else. Okay, but now moving on, we go to law number 2, which is make a habit attractive. Let's face it, as human species, we're kind of like biologically wired to look for the path of least resistance. That means if something is rather boring or painful, like chances are we're not gonna enjoy sticking to it to the long term. For this reason, the author, James Clear, alludes to the concept of attention bundling. You can basically attach a habit that is not so good for you with a habit that you want to create. So for example, if you have the bad habit of eating ice cream, then you can attach it to a habit that will be healthier for you. I'm saying ice cream because I love ice cream. So for example, in my case, I would say, before I eat ice cream, right, I will walk for 10 minutes instead of forcing a habit, right? We trick our brains to crave the habit so that it's much more easier for us to do. The other thing we can do to make a habit more attractive is to surround yourself with positive influence. And that means surrounding yourself with people or in a group or culture with the habit you want to adopt is the normal behavior. But why does this make a habit attractive? Humans, again, all thanks to our old-age brains and biology, we are social creatures. So in order to survive, it's our instinct. We seek to belong to a tribe. For this reason, behaviors that are seen as more desirable within a group will be therefore behaviors that consciously or subconsciously we will want to adopt in order to survive and fit into the tribe. Law of behavior change number 3, make a habit easy. That's because when a habit is new and shiny, it's very easy to be on fire. But we all know, and I think we're probably all familiar, that this feeling doesn't last long, and there will be bad days that no matter how much we want something, it will be very, very difficult to actually do the tasks that you need to do. So in order to make habits easier, one of the things you can do, one, is environment design. So this is a concept that we already talked about. In this particular section, the author, though, refers us to removing all the friction. So for example, here, when I'm filming a YouTube video, right? I already have kind of like a studio set up, if you will, because it's very bothersome and cumbersome. If I had to come to film, every time I have to film a video, I would have to set up my tripod, set up my lighting, set up the background. I have it all set up, so the only thing I need to do is sit here and start recording. Same thing for you. If you want to create a new habit, just remove any friction that can make implementing the habit harder. And number 2, and personally one of my favorite strategies, is to implement the 2 minutes rule. As the name implies, When you first start to implement a habit, right, the first few days, the first few weeks, you only do it for 2 minutes and that's it. Say you want to practice yoga, then every day you take out your yoga mat, you put it down, that's it. And the idea here is that first and foremost, you master showing up. Because again, a habit, according to the author, should not be difficult. Otherwise, it is very likely that you won't do it in the long term. Once you master showing up and it becomes automatic, okay, yeah, I open my yoga mat. Oh yeah, I put my camera on. Then you can start slowly increasing the time you spend on the same habit because behavior of showing up is already implemented. It is very hard, if not impossible, to create long-lasting change, right? If you cannot even show. And last but not least, law number 4 of behavioral change, make a habit satisfying. The reward part of the formula, and it's one of the reasons why we keep coming back to this habit because it feels good. If a habit didn't feel good, it would be much harder to keep it for the long term. That is why it's so hard to break bad habits, because bad habits, they really tend to feel really good at the present time. Pleasure teaches your brain that a behavior is worth remembering and repeating. Considering this, we should definitely aim to make our new habits as satisfying and rewarding as possible. But there is a little trick here. We just don't need any type of reward. We need instant reward. This is why bad habits, again, are so hard to get rid of. So bad habits, their rewards tend to be in the present, and good habits or more productive habits tend to be the opposite. The reward tends to be in the future. In other words, the cost of a habit is delayed because it definitely will have a cost in the future for you, whether the cost of good habits you pay on front and the rewards are in the future. So some tricks to make your habits more satisfying. Number 1 is to track your progress. Of course, progress is not linear. It tends to look more like the stock market, right? Some days like this, some days like this. But if you are consistent with your habits, eventually, right, the graph will go like that. And that can bring a lot of rewards. The second tip is to celebrate small wins, no matter how small the win is. The third tip is to refrain your mind to try to focus on the instant wins. So instead of, for example, saying, oh, I have to save up for my retirement, say, I'm building my financial freedom today. So to recap, you're always forming new habits and reinforcing old ones. Number 2, habits can be a double-edged sword that can be used for good or for evil. Number 3, you should focus on systems as opposed to goals. And number 4, you should align to the 4 laws of behavior change, which are, in order to reinforce or create a new habit, make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. And of course, if you want to break a bad habit, you can do the opposite with these laws, which is make it invisible, make it unattractive, make it very hard, and make it unsatisfactory. So before we part ways, I just want to leave you with this one thought, and is that all this habit creation and systems and atomic habits and so on is all good and dandy, but you have to be careful to fall into this one fallacy, and that is trying to change your outward outcomes or actions and circumstances without changing your inner beliefs and identity. According to the author, there are 3 layers to behavior change. The first layer is changing your outcomes. The second layer is changing your processes. And the third layer is changing your identity. So layer number 1 is what you get. Layer number 2 is what you do. And layer number 3 is what you believe. In short, instead of trying to do the thing, you become the person who this type of behavior is normal. So for example, instead of saying, I have to meal prep, I have to eat healthy, instead, you become, right? Your life, your personality, your identity transforms to become into a healthy person that enjoys nourishing their body healthily and simply has a healthy lifestyle. And that's just part of who they are forever and ever. Well, that's it, my sweets. I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember, because we're focusing in small habits with small increments, it takes probably a long time. So patience is key, but worry not. If you show up every day, even if it's for 2 minutes, I promise you, you will see the changes. So I hope this was very helpful. If you're interested in my video, in my comments, I'll leave other videos here. You're more than welcome to watch them. Other than that, feel free to like and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.